Hey, what's up, guys? JB here, and welcome to my final episode of Future Look. I've been doing this series now for over a year, and with the impending loss of global foresight in our road to the worldwide version, and no longer really having that time to research and prep these deep dive reviews, and then at the same time, really thinking about how insane and pushed this particular unit that we're going to look at today is, I think it is the most perfect and poetic place to end it. Now, that is not going to be the end of content coming from me. It's just that I'm going to be retiring this specific format that I've been working on perfecting here over the course of its run. It really all started way back about a year and a half ago, very early on in the life of this channel when I did some look-aheads at some specific trends that were happening in the JP side with some EX upgrades and also some elemental shifts that were happening at that time in the meta, specifically with lightning and dark elements early last year. And eventually this progressed into covering each and every unit from the JP side months in advance. And if I do tally everything up, this will in fact be the 40th and final episode. So I do really hope that you guys have enjoyed this series, and I do hope that you will enjoy this last one just the same. So without further ado, let's get into it. So Bridal Alaya will be joining War of the Visions as a 100 cost lightning unit. Actually maybe a bit conservative there on the cost rating. She has a base 3-1 movement, and she can wear hats and cloth. Starting with the TMR, this one is providing a self buff of 25 strike attack and a 5% AP auto restore. And I really think that a TMR like this, it may really shine best on the older guard of strike units that really weren't bringing in those amazing next generation style self buffs that we've been seeing on all of the newer units over the course of the last 12 to 16 months of the game. You think about units like Raldor or Lamiga or maybe even Tifa. The accessory itself, it doesn't really carry any agility or attack value, so I don't really see a huge reason to run this TMR otherwise. Now, taking a look at Alaya's stats here next, really top notch across the board here. Not really a major weakness in any of these categories, and really she's coming in above average and really all the ones you're going to care most about. We have pretty good HP and attack values here. The attack value though, it's not really blowing us away compared to some of the other units out there, but when you do stack it up against other strike units that have come through, it is actually very strong, especially when you do consider that she does have an attack passive that she can use to actually boost this up even further. Now, certainly jumping off the page here is going to be that innate agility value. She is tied with several other units here for top marks in the game, and she doesn't have or need an agility passive in order to get there. Accuracy for this unit is also a highlight. On the base side, it's really more or less average, but she does get some help there in the form of her mastery and passive abilities, which does put her up among the top ends of the game. So like I mentioned, no weaknesses here statistically. If you're really being picky, you could point out that crit value, which it's really nothing to write home about, but otherwise very, very solid here for Alaya. For the defensive picture, 0 defense and 0 spirit, not uncommon for most damage dealers these days. Resistances though are looking pretty nice, 20% to both slash and strike, 10% to missile, and then 5% against magic. Just a single weakness here, and that is going to be one that we've seen coming in on several units as of late, and that is that 10% against pierce damage. On the ailment front, we do have 50% to charm, which is super nice. I always like to see that. And then we do have some resistances here to both stun and paralyze, which are definitely much more niche, amongst the units in the game. For her mastery ability, she is going to be picking up 20 defense penetration and then 30% acquired AP, so that is decent enough. When you do take her all the way up to level 140, she is going to be picking up 20% accuracy as well as 10% area resistance. And then finally, a skill upgrade to her Job 7 ability, which we will take a look at in the skills overview. In terms of reincarnation, as we've seen for physical frontline attackers, the standard numbers here if you do invest scrolls into her, and I do imagine that some people will be doing just that. She has been on the radar for some people out there for some time now since she was announced, and I do consider her a very good candidate to do that. Moving now into support abilities and counters, I think for most builds here, you're probably going to be looking at passives 1 and 3. It's going to get you that attack and defense penetration, which will put her up to a 60% value right out of the box. And then that fourth one is going to round her out with some accuracy and reaction block. I do think that there certainly will be a time and a place for passive number 4 as well. That's going to get her up to a move 4, but also dropping her hate value. I think that mobility is great for manual play as always, but I can definitely see this being useful in auto play as well, specifically to get out her select 3 ability onto multiple units even even easier, while at the same time putting her further down in the hate chain and less likely to be targeted. Now, another sort of cheeky but actually somewhat viable option will be utilizing passive number 6 here. This is going to get her another stack of acquired AP, which I think will be very useful for her. We'll see here in a few minutes that this is a very AP hungry unit. But, as we looked at in the stats overview, she does have very solid agility and pretty good luck as well. So with the evasion that she's picking up here in the passive, if you were to heavily lean into that in your build, maybe with some luck and agility stones on top of that, I think you could put her in a place where she would be moderately evasive, maybe enough to dodge some of the less accurate units or tanks out there. I don't think it's going to be a super competitive or high-end build for her, just due to the lack of card support, both within her element but also within her job class. Now, in terms of her counter abilities, it's going to be pretty straightforward here, I think. There's really only one viable choice, in my opinion, and that's the one that's going to come from her new unique job. This one can get as high as a 70% proc rate against both slash and magic damage. This one's going to be a preemptive counter strike. It's got very nice range there on up to a range of 4, so basically set this one and forget it. I think it's the best of the bunch for her. Alright guys, let's get into the bread and butter of the kit here now. What is she bringing into the battle with her main kit? Well, let's look at the buffs. The first one is going to be a self buff. It's going to give her protect and shell, and then 2 different skill upgrades. The first being her basic attack, which will get it up to a low 121% mod. I think this is pretty good for a couple of reasons. If she does run out of AP, well, her basic attack isn't going to hit like a wet noodle. This also is going to give her something to use if the enemy is stacking quite high lightning resistance. I think at this point, most of us have seen the crazy damage that Sephiroth can do with Scintilla in some circumstances. The second skill upgrade she's going to pick up as part of this buff will be to her third skill that we'll look at here in a moment, but basically it just ups the chance for the paralysis on that attack. So pretty good self buff here. She's getting a little bit of survivability with the protect and shell, and then some nice skill bonuses here on top. Now the second buff is going to be her party buff, and this one is quite crazy. We have a whopping 30% area resist that goes to herself and her allies, the highest that we've ever seen on a party buff. She's also going to give an innate re-raise dispel on hit as well, so amazing utility coming in. We're not done there though. Alaya herself will also get Immortal Spirit, and then a triggered portion of this buff, which will reduce her hate value by 6 when she hits a 20% HP threshold or less. So I think the idea here is that, if someone procs her courage, she's going to get that reduction in her hate value, and then perhaps the next unit that comes along, it's going to make it less likely for them to attack and finish her off. So it certainly could be situationally useful there. Now this buff, as I said, it's absolutely crazy. It really wasn't all that long ago where 15 area resist on a party buff actually seemed quite good. So this one here is just making everything else look bad in comparison. This is also the yin to the yang of Uriel's buffable courage removal, so maybe could make them quite an interesting combination to play together, or certainly for Uriel to be a very nice counter against Alaya here at the least. Moving into the attack skills here now, and her low AP skill is going to be a range 2, range height of 1, with that standard low 121% mod. This one's just coming in with one effect, and it's going to be a self buff of 40% attack for 3 turns. I think you're really only going to be seeing this come out, when she is trying to finish someone off in battle, but I think getting that mid-fight attack buff could actually be pretty nice if you have other units that you need to get to, and could be a significant factor in closing out the match. So I do like this. I think that it can be useful in some situations. Now skill number 2 is certainly going to be the marquee creme de la creme for this unit. May very well be one of the best attack skills we've ever seen come into the game. To start off, this one's going to be a range 5 with a range height of 2. So right off the bat, amazing range and range height flexibility with a skill, especially when you consider it's a large 200% modifier. Now this one is a select 3 ability, meaning that it can potentially hit the entire team in PvP and have it checked against their unit resistance, instead of the area resistance that so many units are stacking up these days. So the targeting radius is going to be absolutely massive on this thing, 5 in every direction, similar to Amnelis's ternary seal ability. If that alone weren't enough, we do have 3 effects here coming in on the skill. Prior to the damage, she will get 40% strike res penetration, something that we really haven't seen in the game at all so far. And it will make it incredibly hard to defend against this particular attack. This one also does cancel skill activation, so any mages out there who might be channeling a spell, if they manage to actually survive the hit, spoiler, they probably won't, their skill will be interrupted. And then finally, it's also going to drop their CT on top of that by 20 as well. So absolutely insane stuff here, guys. Now, skill number 3, this is going to be a traditional area of effect attack. It's going to be topping out at that range of 4 and range height of 2 there on the AoE. It's going to be coming in at a large 200% modifier. This one is going to have a 25% base chance to paralyze your target. Pretty cool. This is not an ailment that many people out there are usually focused against guarding. Now, as we mentioned, the percentage to land it can be increased with that self buff and get it up to a 45% chance. So certainly a potential case to be made that you might look at raising the faith here on Alaya. Certainly as high as 70, maybe even as high as 97 if you were trying to work this into your strategy. Alaya's 4th skill is going to be a range of 4 with the range height of 1. It's coming in with that medium 165 mod. This one is going to be a 3-hit chaining attack, so it will be quite nice for PvE and guild raid play. We have just a single effect of utility here on this one. It's going to have a physical barrier break coming in prior to the damage. Now, as I always say, this is essential utility to have in today's game, so it is very nice that she does have this included here in her main kit. Now, last but not least, we do have the limit burst, and similar to that second skill that we looked at, this one is absolutely insane. This one is going to be topping out at that range of 4. We're going to be bringing in that pre-damage area of effect Imperil as the main effect. And this one's going to be a variable style Imperil, meaning that, depending on how many units are actually caught in the blast, the value of the Imperil will actually change. So it's 50% if you catch 3 or more targets there in the blast. That is already amazing, as the highest that we've ever seen in the game so far has been 48%, and it's just been on 2 units thus far, which is Sadali and Delita. This one can go even higher than that though. If you're targeting just a single enemy there, it will go as high as 60% there on the Imperil. Now, of course, because this is a limit burst, that is going to be calculated prior to the damage, so this limit burst here is just going to blow people up. Even units in the earth element who are stacking heavy lightning resistance, they're going to be quite afraid of this skill as well. So I really don't know how else to say it. This kit is just crazy. The damage is going to be incredibly hard to mitigate, at least with the tools that we have available right now. Of course, protect status will be able to slow her down a bit. No courage removal or dispel here for her in the kit either. Honestly though, the other stuff is just so good that I don't think it's really going to hold her back all that much. Just look for a teammate that can maybe fill in some of those gaps for her and complement her quite well. Honestly, I think one of the biggest obstacles for this unit is going to be the AP management situation. You can see many of these skills are mid to high 20s, and that limit burst in particular is coming in at 58 AP, which is much higher than we normally expect to see on most physical damage dealers out there. So definitely something to be aware of when you are building this unit. All right, let's take a quick look at the sub jobs here next. 2 more attack skills coming in for Alaya in the main job sub. The first one is actually very nice. It's a range 3 2-hit attack. It does have a 38% strike imperil on there as well, but it does come post damage. Probably more suited, I'd say, for manual control, since I can't really see the AI utilizing this one in many situations. Maybe unless available AP is factoring in at that point. Otherwise, she does have unit-based attacks in the main kit, which will do more damage than this one. The second skill, though, I can see the AI maybe going to in certain situations. It does have an extra large 240% mod. It is just very limited in its range there at just a range of 1 and a range height of 1. So overall, I think this sub job, it's decent enough, it's okay. But again, I think it's probably going to be more suited for manual control or maybe PvE type situations. Now, she does have Gunner available to her here as well, which is kind of interesting. A couple of decent buffs there in the kits, but unfortunately, she doesn't get access to some of the skills, which I think are maybe some of the more compelling options from Gunner. She doesn't get access to Arm Shot for that disable ailment, and she doesn't get access to Double Shot for that defense break and chaining ability. So I can't really see myself using this kit all that often either, but it's definitely a nice callback to her original Ice version. For me, I think in most cases, I'll probably be opting for this operative sub job, mainly just for one ability, and that's going to be that Shadow Dance buff. Of course, that's going to give you that a barrier, the agility, and then that 5% AP auto restore. So if you are able to get this one off in battle, I think it's going to go a long way in sort of helping out that AP situation that we were just talking about. Of course, at that point, you're going to have 3 potential buffs that you might be looking at getting online. Generally, we only have time to maybe get off 2 in auto PvP. So at that point, I think you might need to pick and choose, which buffs you actually want to utilize in battle. Definitely a nice option, though, here for you if you do want to leverage it. Now, of course, there will be a new vision card that will be coming in alongside Alaya. This one's going to be effective for axes, fists, gloves, and spears. Now, we know there already has been some nice synergy between that fist and spear groups groups with that Full Metal Alchemist card that we did get a couple of months ago. Well, this new card is going to sort of complete the puzzle there. It's going to give you that area resist that you can slot into the main as well and kind of give you that trifecta of effects. And I think that's really going to enable some very nice builds that you can put together between those two jobs. With this card coming in, I would say don't sleep on that fist and glove synergy either, especially if you did happen to pick up that Dragon Quest Zoma card there as well. Now, as we did see in Alaya's skills, she doesn't have any guaranteed hit to fall back on. Well, this card here is going to help that out in a very big way. You do have that 28 luck coming in there on the base stats, and then the bestowed ability is going to get her another 15% flat accuracy. So if Alaya is main slotting this card, that's going to net her roughly 25 total accuracy, which is going to go a long way in sort of helping her hedge against those evade unit threats out there. So definitely a great card to pick up for Alaya, but if you're someone maybe who's only dabbling in these job cards and maybe not going for Alaya, I think this is a great one to consider, especially if you did previously invest in that Full Metal Alchemist card there a couple months back. Now, speaking of cards, let's take a look at the Fist group overall here. As we know, it's been one of the most developed groups that has come through so far with the advent of these job cards. Of course, up through JP's timeline, they are up to 8 total cards for this group now. As we know, they really have all of the effects that you'd really want covered here, and even multiple of those in some cases. I think, though, if you are just interested in the Fist group itself, it's debatable, whether you'd want to pick up multiple of these, but, if you are looking to do that mixing and matching, I think they can certainly be nice for that scenario. Now, there is going to be a new Fist weapon that will debut alongside Alaya as well. I have this one translated as the Dragon Horn. I'm going to be highlighting the Assault version here today. I think it's going to be the primary one that you'd want to build. I don't think the other options are all that compelling. This one's just getting that 15 strike attack there as the unconditional passive. That's definitely whatever. We have many fists at this point that are able to do that. But as always, we are going to have some conditional passives coming in here on this one. And this is going to be effective for a couple of older Fist jobs as well, in addition to Alaya. That's going to be the Fist jobs like Monk and Pugilist. So this will definitely be a nice upgrade for some of those older units. They're going to have access to that 20% strike res pen, which is much more than we can get on a Trust Stone. Now on top of that, they are going to be getting that 15% reduced AP consumption. That's going to be huge not only for Alaya, who we do have AP concerns for her, but also those older jobs, which, as we know, that they've definitely had their own AP struggles that they've been dealing with. So I definitely like this for all the units involved. All right, guys, last up is going to be the mock builds. We're going to be going for another balanced setup here, meaning that we want to cover multiple facets or team setups that we might be seeing out there in the meta. But then I'm also going to be mixing in that angle of that Fist and Pierce job synergy that we did talk about there as well. And we're going to be able to pull that off with the Full Metal Alchemist card, as well as this new Bridal card that we just looked at. Now, the load up here is actually going to build around Dialdo as my frontline tank. Of course, Alphonse could be a great choice there in the middle as well. However, at that point, that has me leaning on 2 different lightning units. I'll be very, very weak against Earth in that situation. Of course, once Alaya is in the game, I'm expecting to see a lot of her out there on the battlefield, so Dialdo is going to help me out there as well. To tie it all together, I am going to have Edward there in slot 3. I think that he complements Alaya very, very nicely. Of course, he does bring that AoE barrier break. He's got the Dispel on hits. He's got the large defense break as well. And then he has the courage removal from the Strider sub-job. And of course, if I run into any Earth counters, he's going to be my trump card there. So for equipment in the build, we're definitely going to be using that new Fist that we just looked at. I'm going to go with an Alex ring there in slot 2. Because I am going for a more balanced setup, I do want to be able to clear evade teams without any issues. Edward will certainly help out quite a bit with that, but Alaya will be built very, very accurate here as well, so that she will be able to chip in as well. And then lastly, I do have one of the best TMRs there in the game in slot 3. It's going to be Bradley's TMR for that self-haste effect. For the Esper choice, as I always use in my accuracy builds, I'm going with the OG Odin. Not only does he give me that nice accuracy and human killer, but he does bring me that blind resistance as well, which is very important for going up against units like Yuffie and Sweetheart Ildira. For the vision card setup, I'm more or less going with the standard strike setup here. We've got all of the main effects covered between the wedding card and then the Full Metal Alchemist card. The only real difference that I'm adding in here to that strike setup is that I am bringing in that Secrets of the Heart card there in Edward's sub slot, and I am using that in lieu of another offensive card. Reason being is that it will net Alaya roughly 12% additional accuracy, and then as a bonus, it does get Dialdo some earth resistance there on top. Now, if you didn't really care as much about covering against that evade threat, certainly you could bring another more offensive-minded card here, something with a modifier or attack value, and then of course go for the Genji glove there instead of that Alex ring. Now, within the Trust Stone setup here, I'm going to be doubling up on that blind resistance to get me up to a 50% total, and I'm going to tie that into a luck set there to further increase my accuracy. On the right side, I'm going to go tried and true with an agility set, and then fill in the needed offensive passives there to round everything out. Now, in terms of the stats here, you can see the HP, it is a little bit on the lower side, just because we are using an HP set. The attack and agility, though, are going to be very, very strong. Accuracy as well, not too shabby at all. We are at 422% in this build. Now, against top-end Yufis, to be honest, I think you're going to need a little bit more. So at that point, you could sacrifice a bit of agility here, go for an accuracy set there on the right side, and I think you'd have all your bases covered. So I don't really consider this unit as one of the top-end bruisers of the game in terms of survivability, but, the damage is certainly going to be there, and she's going to be very scary to face on the battlefield. Now, as always, I will have a link to this build in the description below if you did want to have a look at the finer details. So what is my verdict today on Alaya? Starting with the positives, the damage on this unit, as I've mentioned several times, is going to be absolutely insane. Some of the recent survivability trends in the game have been large increases in area resistance and strike resistance as well, both things which Alaya really cares very little about, with that select 3 ability and strong strike resist penetration potential. And in fact, even Earth units out there should be very careful around this unit, with the potential area of effect 50% in peril or higher that she's able to bring. She's not going to be lacking all that much in the utility department either, with that party buffable 30% area resistance and re-raise removal on hits, allowing for new potential strategies on the battlefield. On the more negative side for this unit, although that utility that we just mentioned is very strong, it can also be dispelled very, very easily, leaving Alaya much more vulnerable to area of effect attacks. And although Alaya does have some survivability, I would say that she is much closer to a glass cannon than she is a bruiser, especially if you are able to get to her with courage removal. On top of that, she does bring a pretty significant weakness against pierce damage, something that the earth element in particular is very strong with. Alaya is also a unit that you will need to be a bit mindful of her AP management. Some of her skills, and especially her limit burst, are very expensive to use, even if you do factor in the 15% discount that she does get from her new weapon. On top of that, Alaya doesn't have any 100% hits available to her in her kit that she's able to fall back on, so you will certainly need to build up some accuracy if evade matchups are in your purview. That one I think isn't that huge of an issue for her though. Thankfully, she does have a very nice starting accuracy that she's able to build off of. At the end of the day, Alaya is setting a new bar for strike damage dealers in the game, a bar that's already been set extremely high in the last 6 months with top units like Edward Elric and Perrine. This was a unit that was very disruptive to the meta over in JP, and in my opinion, is simply one of the best damage dealers that we've seen this year. So there it is, guys. That is going to do it for this final edition here of Future Look, as we peered ahead at Bridal Alaya here today. With the window of foresight closing for us in global, it's hard for me to say that really any unit is a can't miss at this point, especially when that unit is a permanent pool like Alaya is. Because as we know with this game, there is a circle to it, there are problems and there are solutions that come later. So we know that no unit stays on top forever. That said, I think this is one of the best units that we've seen come into the game this year, right next to Brad, Raph, and Sephiroth. And certainly will be a terror to water players everywhere. So that's going to do it, guys. Blow it out in the comments. You know that I read and reply to all of them. Being honest, wrapping this series up here today is a bit emotional for me. I have put my heart and soul into these reviews for the better part of a year and a half now. So let's pour one out today for our future look. If this series has helped you out at all, I want to hear about it down in the comments in this end of an era here for the channel. It's not all doom and gloom there though. I will try and find some ways to hopefully bring you guys some fun and informative content as we do move forward. I just haven't really figured out exactly what it's going to look like quite yet, but do stay tuned. If you enjoyed the video today, hit that like button. It really helps me out with the YouTube algorithm. And if you like what I'm doing here on the channel, hit that subscribe button if you want to see more. And that's really all that I have to say for today. So as always, stay safe out there, and I'll see you guys in the next one.